as it also holds nuclear drills. In India, a Dhanteras surprise from the Reserve Bank. More than 100 tons of gold stored in London has been brought back home. It's a happy Diwali for Reddit too. The social media platform has made a profit for the first time in 19 years. In Guinea, the ruling junta has banned more than 50 political parties. We'll also tell you about the biggest cheese heist in the world and what's the Vikram Samvat, the Hindu calendar that has given us 2 days of Diwali this time instead of 1. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Mediators are set to propose a Gaza truce of less than a month, say reports. The discussions in Doha were attended by the Mossad chief, the CIA director and the Qatari Prime Minister. It involves exchanging Israeli hostages for Palestinians in Israeli prisons and increasing aid to Gaza. China's ambassador to Pakistan calls out Islamabad, asking the Shehbaz Sharif government to act against anti-China elements in the country. In the last 6 months, there have been 2 terror attacks on Chinese nationals in Pakistan. The last attack was earlier this month, just days before the Chinese premier's visit to Pakistan. Mozambique's opposition leader calls for a week-long strike from tomorrow. It is to protest the result of the presidential election. The ruling party won the October vote, but the opposition claims the election was rigged. The Frelimo party has been in power in the southern African nation for 49 years. Torrential rains trigger floods in Spain's Valencia region, wreaking havoc. More than 50 people have been killed. Hundreds are feared to be trapped. Nearly 200 people have been rescued. The floods have cut off roads and disrupted power supply to this region. And Bitcoin trades close to its record high as investors keep a cautious eye on the US presidential election. The surge in the price of Bitcoin is being seen as a bet on a Republican victory, with Donald Trump emerging as the pro-crypto candidate.
We provided non-classified information. The evidence showed links to the government of India conducting illegal activities against Canadians.
We start with the India-Canada relationship. It's already at rock bottom, so it's hard to imagine things going worse, but they are. This month, India expelled 6 Canadian diplomats and recalled 6 of its own from Canada. New Delhi has virtually downgraded this relationship and placed the blame squarely on Justin Trudeau. India has accused Trudeau of pandering to terrorists. In Indian diplomacy, this kind of treatment is typically reserved for countries like Pakistan. So this is rock bottom, like I said. But Canada is not done ruining it. Yesterday, they decided to up the ante. Listen to this.
You can confirm then that the information about, for example, the Indian Home Affairs Minister and his alleged involvement in these crimes in Canada, that was not released in Canada, however. Can you confirm that? That was only released in the Washington Post, pardon me.
So this is not an information we provided to the journalists.
Mr. Morrison, can you comment? Did you provide that information?
The journalist called me and asked me if it was that person. I confirmed it was that person.
David Morrison is Canada's Deputy Foreign Minister. He was talking about Amit Shah, the Home Minister of India. Morrison was testifying before Canadian parliamentarians. He claims that Amit Shah is targeting Khalistanis in Canada, that he personally ordered operations against them. And this is what the West is choosing to highlight too. But they have completely ignored the full context of this conversation. Morrison was being grilled about a story in the Washington Post. We're talking about this report. It came out when the scandal exploded. The story claims that Indian diplomats were gathering intelligence about Khalistanis in Canada. And where did the Washington Post get this from? The story cites unnamed sources, someone from within the Canadian establishment. They leaked this information to the Washington Post. Do you know who their source was? The same David Morrison, Canada's Deputy Foreign Minister, and Nathalie Drouin. She is Canada's National Security Advisor. Yesterday, both of them were questioned about the leak, and they admitted to leaking sensitive information, saying that this was part of a deliberate strategy.
We provided non-classified information on the action we had taken to cooperate with India and explained how the evidence showed links to the government of India conducting illegal activities against Canadians, including threats to their lives.
Now, it is a well-known fact. The Trudeau administration does not like being criticized by the Indian press. They call it foreign interference. They have accused several Indian journalists and media outlets of interference, and this list includes First Post. It's a list maintained by the Government of Canada. It emerged earlier this month. The report was called Potential Foreign Information Manipulation. Now, tracking and labeling Indian journalists is bad enough. These leaks are worse. They set a dangerous precedent. This is information warfare. The Canadians weaponize the Washington Post and use selective leaks to build a counter-narrative. Washington Post, as you would know, is an American newspaper. As far as we know, the print edition is not published in Canada. So why didn't the Trudeau government go to a Canadian outlet first? Even Canadian lawmakers are asking this question.
In fact, Canadians wouldn't know unless they were able to read the Washington Post. I just find that quite unfair to the Canadian public that details were released in advance to the Washington Post and confirmed, according to Mr. Morrison, to the Washington Post, but not provided to Canada. Don't you find that odd?
The reason why we offered, as I said in my opening remarks, a background interview to the Washington Post was really to make sure that our side of the story will become clearly and be widely spread, especially at the international level. That was the strategy behind the background interview we gave.
Now, once again, the Canadians have shot themselves in the foot. These disclosures should alarm all sides, both the international community and the citizens of Canada. They should all be worried. Should they trust their government if it goes around leaking sensitive information, that too to a foreign publication? Can Canada's international partners trust Ottawa with intelligence if there is risk of leaks like these? More importantly, why were Justin Trudeau and his government forced to resort to a leak to make their case? Why couldn't they engage with India instead, work with Indian diplomats, share concrete evidence and seek a resolution through diplomatic channels? India's External Affairs Minister spoke about this over the weekend. Dr. S. Jaishankar said that India had warned Canada about the rising threat of extremists in the country.
There are a small minority of people there, but who have made themselves into what appears to be a bigger political voice. Today, they are saying, things about us. But if you actually look, who first raised the presence of organized crime in Canada? We were telling them. We were telling them and they were not listening. So we certainly on our side, we have actually in many ways been the people who have reasoned with the Canadian system saying, look, don't go down this extremist path.
But Justin Trudeau took a different path. Instead of confronting extremists, Trudeau gave the Khalistanis an entry into the mainstream. And Canada's leader of opposition seems to be going down the same path. That's Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre and his Conservative Party are being slammed by Hindu groups in Canada. That's because they pulled out of a Diwali event. Poilievre has not given a reason for the decision, but it is clear that the divide is deepening and it is directly impacting the Indian community in Canada. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is waging a war of his own. With election campaigning in its final stretch, Trump has found a new enemy to attack, the European Union. Trump says Europe needs to buy more American goods, otherwise Brussels will have a big price to pay.
And we'll also pass the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act, meaning if China or any other country is charging us 100 or 200% tariff or tax, then we will charge them 100 or 200% tariff or tax in return. In other words, it's an eye for an eye. And when that happens, everything will just go away.
It's an eye for an eye. That's classic Trump for you. When he was president, tariffs were his favorite tool. And if he wins again, he plans to double down. Trump has a new law in mind. The Trump Reciprocal Trade Act. Yes, he's named it after himself. And what does this law entail? Tariffs across the board on all imports. Imports from China will face a 60% duty, 60%. For other countries, it will be anywhere between 10 and 20%. That's the import duty. And this proposal is already making the Europeans nervous.
We are following the domestic debate in the US, and of course we know that some are considering tariffs. A trade controversy between the US and the European Union would not see any winner but only losers.
That was the German finance minister. His appeal will most likely fall on deaf ears. Tariffs are a key policy tool for Donald Trump. It's this pitch that got him elected the first time. In 2016, it was about punishing China. In 2024, Trump is targeting the European Union.
China is the, I would say, probably the toughest, but there are a lot of tough. You know what's very tough? European Union. Our beautiful European countries, wonderful, wonderful. If you add them up, they're almost the size of us. They treat us so badly. We have a deficit. They don't want anything from us. We have deficits that are crazy, and we're not going to have them anymore. We're going to put tariffs on them.
So this is not a hollow threat. Trump has every intention of following through on this, and why not? It's a strategy that has worked for him in the past. Tariffs resonate with Donald Trump's voter base. The idea rallies them. So Trump has described himself as a tariff man. He says tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Let me quote. Most beautiful word in the dictionary, more beautiful than love, more beautiful than respect. I'm not making this up. These were his exact words. He said this a month ago. But beyond the politics and the populism, is this an approach that will work for America? Economists say it won't. They say if Trump goes ahead with this law, he'll start multiple trade wars with several friendly nations. And we have heard similar arguments before. Now the Democrats are latching on to this. Yesterday, Kamala Harris raised this. She attacked Trump and questioned his policies.
I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress. I pledge to listen to experts, to those who will be impacted by the decisions I make, and to people who disagree with me.
I'll do better than Trump. Essentially, that's her pitch. But will that be enough to win over voters? And is she offering an alternative? What is her economic policy? That is the biggest hole in her campaign. Harris says that Trump's economic policies are flawed, but she doesn't say what she is offering and how exactly she would do better than him. She hasn't been able to spell it out, and this is bothering her team. The Democratic Party is concerned. They feel that Kamala Harris has not been able to get her message through. And remember, the economy is a top issue in this election. That's what the American voters are thinking about. At least that's what polls say, that their biggest concern is the economy. So Harris is switching gears now. In the final week of her campaign, she plans to focus more on the economy. The Democrats may not admit to this, but this shift is telling. Trump's message on trade seems to be resonating with the voters, so Harris has been forced to change her strategy at the last minute. If she wants to beat Donald Trump in this election, she'll have to counter him on tariffs, and she doesn't have much time to figure out how. So Europe is bracing for a Trump presidency, and they're not alone. Even US newspapers are wary. We told you about the Washington Post this week. They've been endorsing candidates since the 1970s, but this time they're not. The editors had planned to endorse Kamala Harris. They even had a statement ready, but the paper's owner killed it. That's Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. He owns the Washington Post, and he decided that the Post would not endorse anyone this time. It's triggered a backlash among readers. More than 250,000 of them have unsubscribed the Washington Post. 250,000 of their subscribers have pulled out. Now, they had around 2.5 million customers, so 10% are gone. And it's not just the subscribers. The staff is also revolting. Nearly 1/3 of the editorial board has resigned in protest. They also wrote a joint op-ed slamming Jeff Bezos' move. So clearly it's not a popular decision, but Bezos is sticking by it. He penned an op-ed for the paper this week. Listen to what he said, and I'm quoting, "What presidential endorsements actually do is create a perception of bias, a perception of non-independence. Ending them is a principled decision, and it's the right one." Well, he's not wrong. The media should not be endorsing candidates. It should only be covering them. Having said that, a few questions do remain. For starters, why now? Bezos had a lot of time to make up his mind. So why 10 days ahead of the election? Why wait until your editors drafted an endorsement? Clearly, there's more at play here. Amazon is eyeing multiple contracts with the US government, but if Donald Trump wins, he could kill them. In fact, he's done it in the past. In 2018, the Pentagon was rolling out a cloud program. Amazon was seen as the frontrunner, but Donald Trump told his defense chief to blacklist Amazon. As a result, the contract went to Microsoft. Maybe Jeff Bezos does not want a repeat of that. Maybe he wants to be in Trump's good books. And to be fair, he does admit this conflict of interest. Let me quote his op-ed again. "You can see my wealth and business interests as a bulwark against intimidation, or you can see them as a web of conflicting interests. Only my own principles can tip the balance from one to the other." Clearly, his readers see it as a conflict of interest, hence the exodus. But will it hurt the Post's bottom line? Well, you cannot hurt what is already dead. The Washington Post is bleeding money. They lost $77 million last year. The readership is down 50% since 2020, 50% down. So I'm guessing Jeff Bezos does not care about the paper's profits. He bought it for the clout. But that was way back in 2013, back when newspapers still meant something, when they had that clout. A lot has changed since then. Trust in the US media has hit a record low. Politicians prefer podcasts over lengthy op-eds. And Jeff Bezos knows this. Listen to what else he's written. "I will not allow this paper to stay on autopilot and fade into irrelevance, overtaken by unresearched podcasts and social media barbs, not without a fight." Again, his instincts are right. Jeff Bezos had every right to do what he did. After all, it's his paper. He owns it. But he got the timing and the optics wrong. As for bias, it goes beyond just domestic US politics. Most American dailies have blinkers on, whether it's their coverage on West Asia or African countries or Asian ones like India. You can notice a distinct pro-Western bias. That may be news for Jeff Bezos, but it's not news for us. We've been seeing that for decades. So the domestic bias does not really surprise us. Plus, endorsement or not, the coverage is still skewed. The Post op-eds have called Donald Trump a lot of things, a fascist, a lunatic, and vulgar. And it's not like endorsing Kamala Harris would have been a step too far. It's pretty much on brand.
They've embarrassed us. They've embarrassed us. Kamala has embarrassed us. She doesn't have what it takes. I'm asking you to dream big again. You're going to dream big.
And I pledge to be a president for all Americans and to always put country above party and self.
So 6 days to go for the US election, and guess which word is making headlines? Garbage. That's what Americans are talking about. It's not a joke, though it did begin with a comedian. On Sunday, this American comedian called Puerto Rico an island of garbage. We told you about it yesterday. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. Its citizens are U.S. citizens. So the comments sparked an uproar. The Trump campaign was quick to distance itself. By Monday, the issue snowballed. Puerto Rican voters were angry. Their leaders called for an apology. Some Republicans were also condemned. The Democrats, on the other hand, tried to capitalize on this. Kamala Harris quoted Puerto Rican voters, especially those in the swing states. And celebrities from this island backed the Democrats. So on Tuesday, Trump spoke about it for the first time.
Nobody loves our Latino community and our Puerto Rican community more than I do. Nobody. You know, it's interesting because I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president by far. Nobody close. I've provided historic funding and the hospital ship when they were hit with a couple of really bad ones right in the road. We got the ship over there with thousands of rooms, actually. It was amazing.
He said he loves Puerto Ricans, but the backlash continued. Things were actually looking up for the Democrats, but then came a comment by the U.S. president.
The Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done.
That was Joe Biden. He was on a Zoom call with Voto Latino. It's a liberal non-profit group. The White House has released the transcript of his remarks. He says he means supporters. That's supporters, but with an apostrophe. A big difference there. But the Republicans aren't buying it. They say Biden called all of Trump's supporters garbage.
All right. Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I have breaking news for you, Mr. President. You may not have heard this. Just moments ago, Joe Biden stated that our supporters are garbage. And I hope their campaign is about to apologize for what Joe Biden just said. We are not garbage. We are patriots who love America. And thank you for running, Mr. President.
Joe Biden has since issued a clarification. I have his tweet with me. This is what it says. Basically, he's saying that he just referred to the comedian, the one who made the garbage island comment. It wasn't a blanket statement for all Trump supporters, but Trump is having none of it.
Remember Hillary? She said deplorable. And then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right? But he doesn't know. You have to please forgive him. Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said.
So the damage is done, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. On Tuesday, Kamala Harris delivered her last speech. She will continue campaigning, of course, but this was her last big statement. Her last pitch to the voters, and she did it with the White House in her background. Ironically, it's the same place that Trump spoke from shortly before the 2021 Capitol riots.
America, we know what Donald Trump has in mind. More chaos, more division, and policies that help those at the very top and hurt everyone else. I offer a different path, and I ask for your vote. And here is my pledge to you. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress.
So that's her closing argument, finding common ground. It's a powerful message, but one that got drowned by Biden's comment. You cannot pitch unity and then call the opposite side garbage. The Democrats are learning that the hard way. They had an advantage here. They had the Puerto Rican support. All they had to do was build on it. Yet it looks like they've squandered those gains, and it's a fear that the Harris campaign has long had. Look at this report. It says Biden wanted to campaign for Kamala Harris in the final days, but the Harris campaign never got back to his team. Why? Because they think that he is a political liability. But they don't want to tell him that. So they kept stonewalling his campaign plans. And we can understand why. His one comment seems to have cost the Democrats some gains that could have been crucial in a race as close as this one. Right now, both candidates are locked in a statistical dead heat. Kamala Harris is at 48%, Donald Trump is at 47%. In swing states, the race is even tighter. These are the states that will finally decide the outcome of the election. There are 7 swing states. Trump is leading in 5 of them. Harris is leading in the 6th one, and they're neck and neck in the 7th one. So with less than a week to go, Biden may have handed Trump an advantage. It could have been a stutter, it could have been a mistake, but at this point that does not really matter. What matters is that the Republicans will play it up and the Democrats will have to defend it. And do watch our special coverage of the US presidential election tomorrow at 9 p.m. only on First Post. Vantage continues after a short break.
Amid the ongoing tensions between the two countries, Nathalie Drouin, the NSA, to Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, has made a shocking confession. NSA Nathalie Drouin has claimed that it was a strategic decision to leak information against India to the Washington Post, and she, along with Deputy Foreign Minister of Canada, David Morrison, leaked that information. The leak took place even before the Canadian police publicly alleged that their probe into the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar revealed links between agents of the Indian government and homicides and violent acts in Canada. She also says that she did not require Trudeau's authorization for leaking that information. Listen in as she speaks to the committee.
Deputy Minister Morrison and I spoke to the Washington Post on background late Sunday afternoon, October 13. We provided non-classified information on the action we had taken to cooperate with India and explained how the evidence showed links to the government of India conducting illegal activities against Canadians, including threats to their lives. The government of India has, from the beginning, accused Canada of engaging in a politically motivated investigation and using the Canadian media to further this. This is clearly not the case. However, we were prepared for this accusation to resurface. Therefore, we made a strategic decision to engage a respected international news outlet that had already published on the subject to ensure the record was straight and that our side of the story would be widely heard. Deputy.
All right, Siddharth Mishra has been tracking that story for us. He joins me on the phone line with more input. Siddharth, before we dive into the larger messaging behind this, important to also share what is the message going out and jog our memories a bit and refer to what Washington Post had actually reported in the first place.
Well, it perhaps tells two things. That one, that there is a classified information which was leaked, sensitive information which was leaked to the American press. It shows that how desperate Trudeau government is to implicate India and the senior Indian officials with this case. And the second is that that there has not been any action against these two senior officials of the Trudeau government. This is an ongoing investigation. The charge sheet has still not been filed in the case. There is no evidence which has been put forth by RCMP. Not even a shred of evidence has been shared with the government of India. Despite that, such names are being thrown in public.
Now let's shift our focus to the war in Ukraine. Russian forces have captured a city in eastern Ukraine, and this is a very significant capture. It leads them to a major war objective, the coal mining city of Pokrovsk that powers Ukraine's steel manufacturing industry. Russia wants to cripple it, and that is why it is targeting Pokrovsk. Obviously, Ukraine's Western backers are worried about all of this. They've given Kiev weapons, but also imposed restrictions. Now they're talking about lifting some of those restrictions. so that Zelensky can use their weapons to attack Russia and not just defend Ukraine. He's been waiting for the go-ahead for a long time, but he may have to wait a bit longer because Russia just sent another warning to the West. Moscow's entire nuclear triad took part in a drill, simulating a massive nuclear response. Here's our report.
I greet everyone. We are the 30th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade and the Battalion Doctor of the 6th Company. We have taken the town of Selidov. Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
Hurrah! Hurrah!
The Russian Defense Ministry released this footage yesterday. It shows their forces celebrating the capture of Selidov. Selidov is a small city in eastern Ukraine. Russia has been trying to capture it for the past few weeks. This is a major blow to Ukraine, because Selidov will likely be used as a staging area for Russia's next battle, the battle for Pokrovsk. The city is crucial for Ukraine's steel industry. A coal mine lies about 10 kilometers west of Pokrovsk. It is Ukraine's only domestic source of coking coal, which is needed to make steel. If the mine falls, Ukraine's domestic steel production may fall to below half the current level, so it would be a setback to Kyiv. That is why Russia is after Pokrovsk. Ukraine is desperately seeking a way to turn the tide. For months now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has been asking the West for more tactical freedom. Ukraine has Western weapons, but it isn't allowed to use them to strike deep into Russian territory. Russia's President Vladimir Putin considers this a red line. He says that Ukraine will need Western help to strike deep into his territory. Putin says this would mean that the West is directly getting involved in the war, and that would justify Russia's use of nuclear weapons. Russia has made nuclear threats before, but it has never acted on them. So maybe the West thought it was a bluff. The US recently said it would not impose any new limits on the use of American weapons. Their justification was that Russia was escalating the war by bringing in North Korean troops. The West says that thousands of North Korean troops are already in Russia. They are reportedly making their way to the front line. The West wants to use this as an excuse to loosen the reins and let Ukraine fire missiles deep into Russian territory. This would be a direct challenge to the Russian president. To show that he means business, Putin did this.
Good afternoon. Today we are conducting another exercise of strategic deterrence forces. We will work out the actions of officials in controlling the use of nuclear weapons with practical launches of ballistic and cruise missiles.
The Russian forces have sprung into action. Moscow launched a nuclear-capable RS-24 Yars missile from the ground. The missile was fired from Russia's northwest. It crossed the entire Russian mainland, and it struck a testing range in Russia's far east. It was a message. It shows that the missile can easily reach the US mainland. Russia also fired the R-29 RMU Sineva nuclear-capable missile from submarines in the Barents Sea. To top it off, Moscow showcased its Tu-95MS strategic missile carriers. So Russia's entire nuclear triad was on display. It was a clear warning to the West. But will Ukraine's allies heed this warning? Or will they give in to Zelensky's increasing desperation?
Yesterday was Dhanteras in India, a festival that comes right before Diwali. A lot of Indians like to buy gold on this day. It's seen as very auspicious. Just ask the RBI. Even they have jumped in on the Dhanteras craze. As you know, the RBI is India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India. Yesterday, they revealed a key development. The RBI secretly shipped 102 tons of gold from London to India. 102 tons of gold. And this was not a purchase. This gold already belonged to the RBI. It was only stored in London. But imagine the logistics. Again, we are talking about 102 tons of metal, a bit like transporting 20 adult elephants over thousands of kilometers. So how did the RBI do it? Naturally, they have not revealed everything, but reports say special flights were chartered, security was stepped up, and once in India, all taxes and customs were waived. Overall, a successful mission. The RBI has vaults in Mumbai and Nagpur. Chances are the gold will be stored there. But why was this decision taken now? To answer that, we must go back to the 1990s when India was facing a financial crisis. It was running out of dollars to import goods. So the then government of India decided to pledge its gold. We're talking about multi-million-dollar loans. You can't get them in your local gold market. You need global trade centers like New York or London. So the RBI sent tons of gold to the Bank of England. This gold was pledged there in exchange for a loan. Of course, the loans have long been repaid, but India's gold remained there, and logistically it did make sense. The gold would be near the London bullion market, so if the need came, it could be easily accessed. Then why is it being brought back now? Well, because of two reasons. One, India's foreign reserves are very healthy now. They stand at $688 billion, enough to cover more than 11 months of imports. So the RBI is more confident. A repeat of the 1990s looks virtually impossible now. Secondly, because of geopolitics. Yes, Britain is on good terms with India, but equations can always change. And if they do, a big chunk of our gold will be on British soil. What if they decide to freeze it? Or worse, sell it off? That's what the West is doing to Russia. When the Ukraine war started, Russia had around $600 billion in reserves. That's gold plus currencies plus assets. Nearly half of that was held abroad, mostly in Western countries, $300 billion. And what did the West do? They froze those $300 billion in assets, meaning Russia could not access its own wealth. Now, don't get me wrong, India and Britain are not going in that direction, but it's always better to have your assets at home, especially if your economy is robust. The RBI is thinking along the same lines. They have around 855 tons of gold in reserves. 855 tons. Around 510 tons of that is now held at home. So more than half is within India. A similar operation was done in the month of May this year as well. The RBI brought 100 tons of gold from London. And now another 102 tons. Should we expect more in the future? Reports say the government is open to such operations, but not this year. And it's not just about repatriating gold, it's also about stocking up. The RBI bought 32 tons of gold from April to September. Gold made up 8% of the reserves in the month of March. Now it makes up more than 9% of India's reserves. So clearly, the Reserve Bank is on a buying spree. The question is why? Because gold is a safe asset. It is not volatile. It is reasonably liquid, and it can diversify your reserves. You may have noticed that in recent times. When there is a war or natural disaster, gold prices remain stable or they increase, which is very different from currencies or oil, which can go either way. So it's a good backup for central banks. It's good for them to have more gold. In fact, central banks hold nearly 20% of all gold ever mined. We have a list. The US has around 8,000 tons of gold. Germany has more than 3,000 tons of gold. Italy has more than 2,400, and so does France. But guess who outranks all of them? Indian households. Ordinary Indians are sitting on 27,000 tons of gold. I'll repeat that, 27,000 tons of gold. Yes, it's clearly an obsession. But in those countries, gold makes up almost 70% of government reserves. Compare that to developing nations. In China, it's 5%. In India, as I said, it's 9%. So expect this landscape to keep evolving. Of course, that's a discussion for another day. Today, it's all about celebrating this reversal. From pledging gold abroad in the 1990s to proudly bringing it back home now. It's a story of India's economic resilience and rise. Our next story is about Reddit. The social media platform has turned a profit for the first time ever. You see, Reddit was founded in 2005. The company bled money for nearly 20 years. But for the first time, it's in the green. So what led to this? Well, a combination of factors. More daily users, more advertising deals, and licensing content to AI companies. So how did Reddit manage all of this? And how does it compare to other social media platforms? Our next report tells you.
Do you know the 6th most Googled word in the United States? It's Reddit. The social media platform was started in 2005 in a dormitory in the United States. The idea was simple: an online space for sharing. In the next 20 years, Reddit carved its own niche. It started with other social media platforms like X and Meta, yet it was never as popular. More importantly, it was never as profitable. Reddit has been bleeding money since its inception. It even went public this year. Even that did not help. In the first quarter after going public, Reddit lost $575 million. So in its nearly 2-decade-long existence, it's never been profitable. But that seems to be changing now. Reddit's third quarter earnings are out. The company has earned $348.4 million, including a nearly $30 million profit. This is the first time the company's been profitable. Not just that, the user base has gone up drastically. Reddit has an average of 97.2 million daily users. That's up by 47% since last year. On some days, daily users even crossed 100 million. So what explains this change in fortune? Before we tell you, let's understand how Reddit works. It isn't like any other social media platform. Reddit has communities for most topics. These are called subreddits. A user or Redditor can post content on these communities. It can be a question or a thread or a media file. Other users then engage and vote on it. The voting system determines which content is more visible. More votes means a higher position. Which brings us to this quarter's results. The profit is because of a range of factors. First is advertising deals. Reddit is investing heavily in it to compete with other platforms. The second is licensing agreements with artificial intelligence companies, the likes of OpenAI and Google. Reddit has signed deals with them. They can use the site's data to train large language models. The deals are worth $203 million. The third factor is virality. Reddit has often been the source of viral content, especially with its ahead-of-the-curve factor. It draws people to Reddit to be in the know. And the fourth reason is a shift from other platforms. There have been frustrations with platforms like Instagram and X, mostly because of algorithm changes. So users are exploring Reddit as an alternative. It's semi-anonymous, it's community-driven, and that appeals to those who feel disconnected from the more commercialized platforms. But while things are looking up for Reddit, it's not going so well for the other platforms. Brazil has sued Meta and TikTok for around $500 million. The lawsuits highlight concerns about the negative impact of these platforms. It says they are harming young people's mental health, that they are not proactively protecting young users. The legal action calls on Meta and TikTok to issue clear warnings, especially about the risks of platform addiction. So, as other platforms are facing flack, Reddit is redefining its role as the front page of the internet.
Now let's head to Africa, to the country of Guinea in the west. Guinea is home to about 15 million people. It is located on the Atlantic coast. It is a former French colony and it is ruled by a military junta. Yes, Guinea is another former French colony under military rule, and like with the others, democracy seems like a pipe dream. Guinea's junta is in crackdown mode. They are going after the political parties in the country. Guinea had 211 political parties up until Monday, 211. But then the junta dissolved 53 of them. So a quarter of the country's political parties were forced to wind up overnight. And it did not stop there. 54 other parties have been suspended, initially for 3 months, and 67 other parties are now under observation. This includes the 2 biggest parties of Guinea, both of whom oppose junta rule. So what does all of this mean? Well, it looks like the junta is preparing to extend its tenure. Guinea's military took control in 2021. They orchestrated a coup and deposed the country's first democratically elected president, Alpha Condé. Back in 2021, the people of Guinea had welcomed the coup because Alpha Condé had reset his presidential term limit and he looked set to extend his rule indefinitely. So the people of Guinea thought that the military had stopped a potential dictatorship. When the junta came in, they promised to clean up Guinea's politics. They said they would hold elections by 2024 and they promised that the junta leader would not stand for elections. This is Guinea's junta chief, General Mamadi Doumbouya. He led the 2021 coup. He is a Guinean-French dual citizen and he's married to a member of the French armed forces. I'll let you decide what to make of that. Doumbouya took control of Guinea in 2021 and he promised that this would be temporary.
From all consultations at all levels since the beginning of the transition, with all groups of society, from all Guineans wherever they are, the median proposal that emerged is a transition of 39 months.
Back then, a lot of Guinean people believed this. But we are now entering the last 2 months of 2024 and the junta shows no signs of giving up power. Instead, they are busy hounding Guinea's political parties. Earlier this year, the junta suggested that the election would be postponed to at least 2025. But before that, the junta plans to hold a referendum to change Guinea's constitution. There has been little progress on that front so far. So the democratic process may face further delays. If and when elections do take place, Guinea will probably find a familiar face on the ballot. Junta chief Mamadi Doumbouya. The new constitution will reportedly allow him to stand in the presidential election, even though he had promised not to do so when he first took over. This has also worried the people of Guinea.
The president has already openly said that neither he nor any member of the CNRD will stand as a candidate. So we think that, as an observer, we should advise him to respect his commitments, because I think this is the only solution for peace and social tranquility in our country.
The junta has already been in power for 3 years and they're in no hurry to hold elections. Guinea's political parties are facing a crackdown and the junta chief is preparing to run for president. It is the same old story. The same thing has played out in a number of countries all over the world. Chad, Egypt, Myanmar. Military juntas never seem to give up power once they acquire it. Perhaps things will end differently in Guinea, but sadly, history suggests otherwise. The feeling of joy is permeating the air as India marks Diwali. It's a celebration of light, of the triumph of good over evil. And today is Choti Diwali, the second day of the Diwali festival, which is usually a 5-day-long affair. But this year, Diwali will last longer. This year, it is a 6-day festival. And it has stirred quite a debate in India. You see, Diwali falls sometime in October or November. The exact date changes every year because in India, the date of Diwali is decided by the Hindu calendar, known as the Vikram Samvat. It follows the position of the moon, and Diwali is celebrated on the darkest night of the month, the new moon night or Amavasya. This year, Amavasya falls on 2 days, October 31st and November 1st, so there is a lot of confusion. This week, a key meeting was held in Madhya Pradesh. Hundreds of priests and experts gathered, and they determined that Diwali should be held on the 1st of November. Though there are many who disagree with this. And this confusion is not limited to Diwali, by the way. It happens on many occasions. Thanks to India's diverse cultural history, which has given the world's most populous nation not 1, not 2, but 4 calendars. Before we tell you more, let's cover the basics. What is a calendar? It's a system of dividing time, and these divisions are arranged in a definite order in terms of days, months, and years. That sounds simple enough. But the problem arises when we ask, what is a year? Astronomy says it is one trip around the sun. It takes 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes and 46 seconds, give or take. But not all calendars follow this logic. So who decides the length of a year? Apparently anyone can, because calendars are never just time planners. They are also a cultural tool. They are shaped by and for the people who make them. They are decided by science and society alike. So calendars are flexible, and humans have been making them since the Bronze Age. Through most of history, calendars have followed the moon, not the sun, like the Islamic Hijri calendar in India. It takes 12 lunar months, which is 354 days, so 11 days shorter than a solar year, which is 365 days. This means that every few years, summer could occur in December. Think of it as a faulty watch that ticks faster than it should, showing you noon when it is still morning. So some ancient Hindus decided to bring their calendar closer to the solar cycle. They developed the Hindu calendar, Vikram Samvat. This is a lunisolar calendar. It follows both the sun and the moon. Now this calendar also has 354 days, but there's a catch. Every third year, 33 days are added and 4 days are adjusted here and there. It is not perfect, but it's seen as middle ground, and it decides when we celebrate major Hindu festivals. That being said, India also has a third calendar, Shak Samvat. This is the solar calendar. It is the closest to the solar cycle, which is why it is also known as the Indian national calendar, though you may not have heard of it, because officially India follows the Gregorian calendar, like most of the rest of the world. The Gregorian calendar is a scientific solar calendar. It is the global standard, but that does not mean it's perfect. It was simply born with an advantage. It was introduced in the right place at the right time. It was introduced by Pope Gregory XIII in the 16th century when 80% of the world was colonized. When it came under European rule, countries adopted this calendar. India did it in 1752 along with the UK. Now, Gregorian uses the birth year of Jesus Christ as the 0 year. That's the starting point of this calendar. It's an important marker, but it's only subjective, obviously. Again, like with all calendars, the starting point is based on a date that is important culturally. The Gregorian calendar belongs to the Christian era, so it begins with the birth of the Christ. The ancient Roman calendar begins with the foundation of Rome. The Islamic calendar starts with the migration of the Prophet from Mecca to Medina. Like we said, calendars are flexible. They start at different points in time and they have different meanings for what constitutes a year. Nepal is one of the few countries where Gregorian is not a national calendar. So they are living in 2081 because officially they follow the Vikram Samvat, 2081. But if you're in Ethiopia, you're still living in 2017 thanks to their official calendar called Ge'ez, which has 13 months in a year. Many cultures are also living in multiple timelines. Some countries follow Gregorian, so officially it is 2024, but step into Thailand and it is also 2567. The year in Thailand, 2567, thanks to their Buddhist era calendar. Go to Morocco and it is 1446, thanks to the Hijri Islamic calendar. And if you're in North Africa, you're time traveling constantly because 3 calendars are being used there simultaneously. Stellar calendar for agricultural reasons, Islamic lunar calendar for religious practice, and the Gregorian calendar for official reasons. It is all very confusing, but it's also quite fascinating. When we look at calendars, we see too many differences, too many clashes, but also a common thread. We remain united in our desire to bend time. Vantage continues after a short break.
Amid the ongoing tensions between the two countries, Nathalie Drouin, the NSA, to Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, has made a shocking confession. NSA Nathalie Drouin has claimed that it was a strategic decision to leak information against India to the Washington Post, and she, along with Deputy Foreign Minister of Canada, David Morrison, leaked that information. The leak took place even before the Canadian police publicly alleged that their probe into the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar revealed links between agents of the Indian government and homicides and violent acts in Canada. She also says that she did not require Trudeau's authorization for leaking that information. Listen in as she speaks to the committee.
Deputy Minister Morrison and I spoke to the Washington Post on background late Sunday afternoon, October 13. We provided non-classified information on the action we had taken to cooperate with India and explained how the evidence showed links to the government of India conducting illegal activities against Canadians, including threats to their lives. The government of India has, from the beginning, accused Canada of engaging in a politically motivated investigation and using the Canadian media to further this. This is clearly not the case. However, we were prepared for this accusation to resurface. Therefore, we made a strategic decision to engage a respected international news outlet that had already published on the subject to ensure the record was straight and that our side of the story would be widely heard.
All right, Siddharth Mishra has been tracking that story for us. He joins me on the phone line with more input. Siddharth, before we dive into the larger messaging behind this, important to also share what is the message going out and jog our memories a bit and refer to what Washington Post had actually reported in the first place.
Well, it perhaps tells two things. That one, that there is a classified information which was leaked, sensitive information which was leaked to the American press. It shows that how desperate Trudeau government is to implicate India and the senior Indian officials with this case. And the second is that that there has not been any action against these two senior officials of the Trudeau government. This is an ongoing investigation. The charge sheet has still not been filed in the case. There is no evidence which has been put forth by RCMP. Not even a shred of evidence has been shared with the government of India. Despite that, such names are being thrown in public. Deliberate attempts have been made so that the Indian officer's image can get maligned. And perhaps that is what the government of Canada is doing at this point in time. Now, this is the first-hand confession from the NSA and the deputy.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. The Ayodhya Ram Mandir marks its first Diwali celebration with 2.5 million diyas. US Ambassador to India Eric Garcetti grooves to a popular Bollywood song during Diwali celebrations, and Indian soldiers celebrate Diwali at the line of control. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1961, the Soviet Union tested a hydrogen bomb called the Tsar Bomba. It was the most powerful nuclear weapon ever created and tested. The Soviet Union detonated it to project its strength during the Cold War. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a happy Diwali. We'll see you tomorrow.
सिया राम किया विश्व कल्याण बोलो राम सिया राम।
इस दिन के इंतजार में दशकों से ये आंखें तरस गई, आएगा ये तो विश्वास था, अब जो तू यहाँ लौटा है।
स्वागत गान गाए जिसके लिए मन में गंगा जिसके हाथ में है, जीते भी मरते भी काम काज करते भी, सुख में दुख में हर एक मुख में गर जाएगी राम। पल पल में युग युग में हर क्षण में राम, हर तन में हर मन में कण कण में राम।
राम काज कीने बिनु मोहि कहाँ विश्राम, और हम लोग भी विश्राम नहीं लेने वाले हैं तब तक जब तक कि सनातन धर्म के मार्ग में जितने भी रोड़े हैं जब तक इनको नामो निशान इनको समाप्त न कर दिया जाए।
Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this very, very special edition of The Right Stand. Ladies and gentlemen, aap sabko Shubh Deepavali. Ram ki Nagri Ayodhya is dazzling like never before. It's Ram Lala's first Deepavali after being Virajman, after the Pran Pratishtha in January earlier this year. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath leading the celebrations in Ayodhya as lakhs of Ram Bhakts have gathered in the holy city to witness this divine Deepavali.